Board Member Stephen Moore. Mr. Howard, will you please introduce the staff?
Thank you. To my left, Chief Counsel Michael Laufer. To my right, Chief Deputies John Bishop and Karen Turgovich. And assisting the board today is Janine Townsend.
Terrific. I see we have some new visitors who aren't here regularly. Please take a moment to look at the emergency exits. If you hear a loud noise that sounds like an emergency sound, we proceed carefully and with all our belongings outside into Cesar Chavez Park if you want to know when the OK sign comes. The other thing is that the meeting is being webcast and recorded, so when you speak, try to get as close to the microphone as you can, and if you'll please take your phones and set them on stun or turn them off, just out of courtesy to folks. That would be great. And with that done, we're on to the public forum section of the board meeting, where we hear from any person who has something to comment on that is not on a regularly scheduled agenda. Ms. Townsend, do we have any cards? I have no cards. Okay. Next, we'll consider the minutes from the June 3rd board meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, with the correction noted by Ms. Townsend.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Next is board member reports. Who wants to start?
I'll report on 4 events that were really all of them quite different and interesting. One is I went down to Region 9 after the board meeting earlier this month, and to the binational summit that had been organized largely by the City of Tijuana and the regional board, David Gibson. It was well attended by people from the region as well as people from Tijuana, and they came up with a very short list of 3 or 4 things that they will pursue together and separately. One of which is the potential of moving into the county owns a gravel pit in the Tijuana Valley area on the San Diego side, and they're looking at possibly using it for sediment containment and that sort of thing. So anyway, it was very, very interesting, and more than once, US EPA was there, and more than once I heard, $1 spent on the Mexico side goes a long, long way, much further than it goes when money is spent on the U.S. side. So we should be looking more into what we can do with Mexico. I went to a dedication at Enchanted Heights, which is near Riverside, of a septic to sewer system. The Eastern Municipal Water District essentially took over this sewer system and facilitated it being brought into a sewer system out of septic. Bridget Chase on our staff was there, and we and particularly the Department of Public Health Drinking Water Program put loads of money into this. And I think that the lesson learned there is that there were high expenditures for this community, and every hookup that had to be switched was different. And so it wasn't just a simple walk into a neighborhood and do a cookie cutter kind of approach to replacing septics. It was, putting in pipes. It was, everything was different. But the community was wonderful. The contractor was wonderful. Everybody was quite cooperative. So it was quite a love fest there. And Bridget got lots and lots of credit. So that was great. I went to a presentation on, I think it's our most recent water right, where we granted a water right to Lauren Bond, who is an artist, on the LA River. And they are building a water wheel. They have one water right, one CFS, or I don't know what it is. And anyway, it's moving forward, and they are holding lots and lots and lots of meetings there. But that with the announcement that the Corps of Engineers is looking favorably on a very large cooperative arrangement with the City of LA for the LA River, it looks like the LA River is going to get lots of attention. And so I was pleased to see that was moving along, and we got lots of credit for moving quickly on this water right. Finally, I met with a large group at the Southern California Area Government's office. It was a meeting on stormwater put together by the Planning and Conservation League, and John Bishop was there and gave a very good presentation on stormwater. And I guess the lesson learned from that particular meeting is that there are a lot of probably legal and barriers to having stormwater issues paid for by water agencies who might be willing if there were sufficient water to pay, but there's some barriers that we're going to have to look into. So that's something to put on our agenda. Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. A couple of items. I'll go ahead and mention it since Board Member Diadamo is not here yet. She and I participated in a trip organized by the fishery agencies on the Stanislaus River. I actually had the opportunity to attend last year at the peak post flow of 3,000 CFS, and this year when we went last week, it was 300 CFS. Let me tell you, it was quite an experience, and it's quite a difference. We visited the same restoration sites that we did last year, and as strongly supportive as I am of habitat restoration, it was very obvious to me that habitat restoration alone, without the necessary flows at the necessary time, is just money thrown away. And so it was a very illustrative day to show the potential for these projects to truly, result in meaningful results only if it's also dovetailed with the appropriate flows at the appropriate times. One of the places we visit, was Honolulu Bar, and last year, the flows were there, and this year we were able to just walk across to the site, and it was real different in terms of the difference that flows can make. So I wanted to thank the fishery agencies for arranging that tour, and for me it was especially meaningful given the opportunity to see the difference in the different kind of flows. Also wanted to mention that I met earlier this week, and do I see, oh, there's DFA, a staff in the audience. I met earlier this week with representatives from the High Desert Water District. If you remember, there is the regional board, and we too, for that matter, have a lot of concerns about some of the septic system in the Yucca Valley area. In fact, the regional board has taken some action there. And so the water district is in the process of, working with us, but also others, to put in a wastewater treatment system that's also a reclamation system that would also go into groundwater recharge. Right now, they are 100% dependent on Delta water. And so it's a very ambitious project for a disadvantaged community, and it's also very costly. So, as we, as staff work with the district, and as, all of us get involved in one way or another in various bond discussion and other issues, I just wanted to highlight not just this district, but I think the issue that we've all, had concern about since we adopted the septic regulations policy is how are we going to help these communities, especially the smaller disadvantaged one, move away from the septic system and help address some of the ongoing contaminations they have with nitrates and everything in their drinking water. So I'll just highlight that as a project that I certainly am very interested in and keeping an eye on and seeing what we can do to help move it along, because it's a really significant project.
And I'll, at the next board meeting, I'll report. I'm going to Yucca Valley I think it's maybe next week, this week or next week. And anyway, I'll report back as to what the community is saying about the project.
That's great. Actually, I promised to visit too, but I promised to visit in the fall when it's not quite as hot.
Great. Thank you. Well, I had a little vacation time these last couple of weeks, so I don't have as many things to report on. But it turns out my vacation had things that I need to report on, so I'll get to that. Can't get away from this job, I think. But at any rate, at the completion here, about my second year as a state water board member, I just wanted to thank everyone. I'm very grateful for this privilege, especially under Governor Brown. But also my fellow thoughtful and knowledgeable board members and the committed and knowledgeable staff of the state and regional boards and the stakeholder community that I believe is determined to collaboratively solve what are very vexing problems but very important problems for our state. So in this second year anniversary for me, I'd like to remind staff that, you hear that the state board members, we go around the state. We're invited to go a lot of places, and so I take pictures of where I go, and I've got a good 50-odd folders on our shared drive. It's the intranet site for all state and regional staff. But all these photos are public. They're public domain. You don't have to give me credit for them. You can use them all you want. You can share them all you want because, it's by the public's resources I get to the privilege of going to these places. And I try to label them carefully so you know exactly what you're looking at. But it goes from, Oregon to Mexico, Pacific Ocean to Nevada. So I encourage you to use that. I hope it's a resource. I'm not going to win any awards with those photos. But there's some informative things. And
So as your counsel, have you granted a perpetual non-commercial license to everybody to use those photos?
I'll talk to my counsel later, but I would like to do that. It's for everyone in perpetuity. And so I'll make that very clear. So at any rate, the one thing, privilege I had to, this last couple weeks was on June 11th, along with Chair Marcus, I attended the Sacramento Region water tour that was presented by the Regional Water Authority of the Sacramento area. And that was an authority formed in the last couple decades by the various water purveyors in this area here in Sacramento. It was informative for me to learn about this, what I see as a regional response to the historic drought conditions in this area. And my sense is that this structured response to the drought here in the Sacramento region can be used as a model for other areas that are grappling with how to respond to the state's historic emergency drought conditions. To illustrate this, the freshwater intakes for the urban water supply in this area have been perilously close to going high and dry, and not just in the Folsom Reservoir, which was the more highly publicized example, but also on the Lower American River as well as the Sacramento River itself. This year's brushes with catastrophe have served to mobilize creativity and collaboration in this area to invest in infrastructure to enhance resiliency to climate change and climate variability in the Sacramento region. And yes, they have installed water meters in over half the Sacramento area and are on pace to get fully metered in a few years. I encourage Chair Marcus to also add her thoughts about the tour, but I think there's something to be learned. So last week, my daughters completed their school years, right? Mm-hmm. And my older daughter, Mariel, completed 4th grade. That's the grade where many California schools teach about California history. And so Mariel was particularly enthralled with the gold rush era and has been bugging me to take her gold panning for 6 months. So we made a trip last weekend to Yosemite area in the Highway 49 corridor, traveled to the region where 50% of the state's water supply comes from in the Sierra Nevada. Half of our water. And I have to share with everyone, the signs of this historic drought are profound in the Sierra Nevada this year. I encourage you to travel there. It feels like late August when you're up there. The buckeyes are already turning orange and making the hills have that color. We were on the South Fork of the Merced River. It's lower and warmer than the locals remember in recent memory. It's great for the kids, the lower and warmer water. midway through June here, there's no snow on the high peaks at all. No springs are flowing along the trails that we hiked on and rode horses on. We went along the Highway 49 corridor between Mariposa and Sonora. The gold panning outfits, all the creeks that they can legally take people to try their hand at gold panning, they're all dry. So we weren't able to do that here mid-June. When you cross the bridge over the reservoir at the Merced River, the Merced River is reclaiming its old channel. It's like seeing a wild and scenic river run through, you know, a reservoir area where you can see the reservoir lines up above. It's reclaiming its old sinuosity. And of course, New Don Pedro is very low, historically low. So, you know, if we use the money analogy on the water story around our state and think of our water budget as a bank account, we're not receiving any paychecks. The storage that we have around the state is our savings account, and that's what we're drawing on. We appear to have already depleted our groundwater retirement savings. You know, we've cashed in our IRAs. They've been liquidated. And so it's as if we're unemployed and we're living month to month on a savings account because there's nothing coming from 50%. And of course, Shasta Trinity is the same story, so it's more than 50%. So I thought it was worth sharing those observations given our subject of this afternoon. I was hoping there'd be more people in the audience, you know, from those who are going to present this afternoon. But I was pretty stricken by the whole experience. I guess the lesson is, you know, travel outside the country next time for the vacation in June, right? But in all seriousness, you know, it's just, I encourage folks to travel around and observe what's going on and internalize it, that the drought's very real, and we have to work together collaboratively to solve these problems. And I know you're all committed to doing that, and I look forward to working with you through this long, dry summer. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. That was wonderful. Yep. Steve and I have crossed parallel paths in addition to together the last couple of weeks. I was really impressed with Regional Water Agency's tour, and Steve said it all very poetically and succinctly. But also the other thing that's impressive is the whole water forum effort that Sacramento area agencies have led on for the last 10, 15 years. They really were the first of the big multiple agency, multi-stakeholder, we can do this better, sort of the, before integrated water management planning was a program, they were creating the model for how to do it. And it's not a short-term process, but it's impressive to see where they've gone and where they continue to go. That was helpful. I also spent time in a couple of speaking engagements, also in the this was sort of upper watershed week, speaking with Mountain County, a Mountain County forum with DWR Director Mark Cowan and Delta Stewardship Council Chair Randy Fiorini, where we spent most of a day, just the three of us, in conversation with water district managers, public members, and county supervisors, talking about the various issues in the Sierra. And folks are, of course, concerned that they're a little further from the drama and the halls of Sacramento and that they'll be forgotten, and reminding us that that is where the water comes from and that the upper watersheds are a critical part of the state's water infrastructure, so to speak. And it was helpful. We talked about the Water Action Plan and how it acknowledges ecosystems and upper watershed, but that is the piece that we have not built out and I think has been somewhat delayed as we respond to the urgency of the drought. But for the long term, we certainly need to be thinking about the importance of the upper watershed. And similarly, the next week I spoke with the Sierra Water Work Group, which is the collaboration of all the Sierra integrated water management planning groups where they come together once a year to share what they're doing, both their challenges and their successes and best management practices and insights. So it was sobering and pretty important, I think, in terms of motivating me to get into the swing of us following through on what we said we would do in the Water Action Plan. And then on Friday, I went with the Drought Task Force to Montague, California, which is about, I don't know, 15 minutes east of Wairika, and a town that is at risk of running out of water in the next couple of months. We've had reports at the drought information items. I'm sure we will again. I just want to thank John O'Hagan and Amanda Montgomery and Barbara and the council, all the team that have been working on that, all very, very hard. People are very appreciative of that, and heard from a variety of county supervisors and county officials in the Northern California counties, some questions about curtailments, but generally a lot of praise for the work in Montague and that we're doing that kind of work. It was actually a great task force meeting, and one where I was anticipating more conflict than there actually was. It was more questions and a nice conversation. So appreciate all the work everybody's been doing. Next week, I'm going to go with Dee Dee on a tour of the South San Joaquin. Some of you have been probably to see most of the things. It will include some fracking as well as some meetings with EJ communities and like. So I'm looking forward to that because I haven't spent as much time in the southernmost part of the San Joaquin as perhaps I should. I've spent a lot of time in the Central Valley. I've not spent a lot of time in the far south, which would be good. And then the other thing I just want to flag for folks, and I don't know, just probably need to put something on the agenda for the first meeting in July, but just to note that unless something unforeseen happens, the drinking water program from the Department of Public Health will be joining us to become part of the state board family July 1st, and I anticipate that all of us will need to be sort of all hands on deck in welcoming our new colleagues and spending a lot of time with them to make them feel welcome. And I just think that there is so much to learn and to benefit from the mingling of our two staffs in being able to think about water from source to tap, different approaches to regulation and compliance assistance, and thinking about public health every day, integrating that into our thinking as it always has been. We've relied on them. I think it will enliven our conversations. I think it will be challenging to make sure that the staff, stakeholders, folks across various agencies and water agencies at the local level as well as state agencies really feel I would say the joy and the opportunity of this merger. So maybe we should put something on the agenda for the first meeting in July. Maybe welcome some of the senior staff, or I'm looking at Liz, whatever you think. Let's think about, and we should probably have some kind of a party. Cupcakes and cookies, something like that. All right. With that, we're going to move into the agenda. I see some people who I think are here for our discussion about water conservation. That will take place no earlier than 12:30. We gave people notice. We didn't know how long this morning's agenda would take. It now looks like it'll be shorter than we thought, but we already gave people some notice. So just to let you all know, if that's what you are here for, we may end up taking a long lunch break, but one never knows as we go through the agenda. Uncontested items, we have items 3 through 5, and it looks like it may also be item 7. Do we have any cards for 3 through 5 or item 7?
So in that case, I'm happy to move items 3 through 5 and 7.
Okay. And
Second.
And the only thing I would add is on items 4 and 7, those are the conditional delegation resolutions. They include references to the trailer bill language being in conference. It's not necessary to amend those resolutions, but I just wanted to advise the board that Senate Bill 861, which is the resources budget trailer bill, has cleared both houses and has gone to the governor for signature, and that's the resources trailer bill that transfers the drinking water program. So.
Thank you. All right.
My second still holds.
There you go. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposition? Didn't hear any. Great. We're now going to move up item number 9. Hear from Rob Oglesby from the Statewide Advisory Committee on Cooling Water Intake Structures. Hey, Rob.
Thank you for having me. Chair Marcus and board members.
You,
Little closer, eh?
Yeah,
Okay,
see?
thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate that. So again, thank you for having me here. This is our annual report from the committee, the Statewide Advisory Committee on Cooling Water Intake Structures, which doesn't say it, but it's really about power plants. And it's about progress being made on the rule you adopted to phase out the use of once-through cooling on the state's many coastal power plants. And when you adopted that rule, you charged the Statewide Advisory Committee on Cooler Water Intake Structures, or SAQUIS, to report back to you annually after consulting with sister agencies and others on progress. So during the course of the past year, a great deal of work has been done to monitor progress, and there have been some developments. And our sister agencies, the Public Utilities Commission, California Independent Systems Operator, CAL-ISO, and the Energy Commission have been meeting in technical groups and have taken several actions. The CPUC has examined the issue and taken actions related to the long-term procurement plan process, ISO's transmission planning process, their piece, and there's a lot of moving parts in energy world that relate to power plant construction. And then the Energy Commission's licensing process for power plants. So this year's report is focused on the Southern California region. And I'll touch on a few other power plants, but basically what we're focusing on are the areas of the Los Angeles Basin and San Diego Basin, because there's some critical energy needs there, and there's some critical energy constraints there. We have local capacity areas that have some constraints on transmission, although it's been improved in recent years. But the biggest feature that was true last year, also true today, is making progress to deal with power assessment needs and power replacement needs that are complicated by the loss of SONGS, the San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station. And so we have critical areas to make sure that reliability is maintained in Los Angeles, but most particularly in the San Diego area. So the spoiler alert is that the SAQUIS committee is not recommending changes at this point in time to your the schedule and the once-through cooling rule. And I'd like to spend this report basically catching up on significant actions and developments over the past 12 months, but also to highlight some of the facilities that bear watching. One of the complications of power plant repowering to phase out once-through cooling is that we have developed sites that are surrounded. And so in order to repower a facility, the projects need to be undertaken on a phased basis. And that complicates the progress that can be made, because first you have to tear down the once-through cooling power plant and then replace it on site. We can't go without power, so the strategies in accomplishing repowering of these facilities is complicated by needing to do them in phases. A further complication is that they're interrelated, and I'll go over this in a little more detail shortly, but a few stations in particular will have their schedules change depending on what happens at other facilities in the area. And so I'll move on to some of the updates first, and then we'll get to that part. The CPUC took actions over the past year to authorize procurement of power, which provides the incentive and the funds needed to undertake the projects. Up north in the Southern Cal region, in the Big Creek Ventura area, they provided new resources that authorized new procurement for Southern California Edison. And in the LA Basin, the San Diego areas, they did the same for new resources, but they also added on some additional increments of procurement authority to make up for the power generation lost by songs. CalISO worked as a part of the team. They worked with the CPUC to help their planning and modeling process that enabled the PCUC to make better informed decisions on their power procurement authorizations. The CalISO, which has the authority over the transmission issues, identified several transmission line upgrades that are needed, both related to once-through cooling phase-out and to provide flexibility and more versatility down there, and songs as well. And they also did analyses of where the power is most needed, because in power, location matters. And in doing that, they basically identified the most important areas to pay attention to. The smallest margins, essentially, are the San Diego area and the Orange County area. Now, on to review some of the power plants. One update, and this one has already happened, and it is to report to you that Morro Bay, which had a once-through cooling phase-out date of 2015, has retired. And at that particular site, there are no plans to repower that plant, so it is off the books.
I have a non-water question to ask about that, non-energy question too. What's going to happen with that stack that's so critical? Are they going to keep it as a landmark? Are they going to take it down? Do you know?
Well, that's actually a very good question, because it is part of the licensing consideration for new power plants, but this was licensed before that process was created, which provides for closure. So the fate of that plant isn't determined, and that'll be an issue.
That's interesting.
We have two plants I'll cover very quickly, and these are the ones that are up north in the Ventura area. Basically, NRG is the owner of the plants, is projecting that they will be complying with the once-through cooling. As I reported earlier, the Public Utilities Commission has authorized power procurement, but at this point in time, we don't have specific details on what the plans are for those energy resources in the region, and that also includes Mandalay. But we're planning on it being phased out on time, and don't have anything to the contrary at this point in time. El Segundo also is on track. There's been phased repowering of the facility, and the Unit 4 is expected to retire no later than December 2015. And it's in process. So no recommendation of changes on that as well. Now we get to the more interesting trio of power plants that have interactions. Redondo Beach is in the process of its application at the Energy Commission. At the moment, it's counted on to comply with its 2020 date for a phase out of once-through cooling. There are a lot of issues associated with the siting. But one of the issues relates to the Alamitos power plant, and basically in order to handle the very valuable emission offsets that are needed for the repowering of the Alamitos, and I'll come to that in just a minute, it's likely that the Huntington Beach will go down in 2018. Redondo Beach, excuse me. Let me move on to Huntington Beach. And I might have said Alamitos when I was referring to Huntington Beach. So these are under the same ownership by AES. And the early retirement of Redondo Beach enables the repowering of the first power block of Huntington Beach by the fourth quarter of 2018. Now, as you may recall, part of Huntington Beach was brought back to life for one summer when songs went out to provide power. Last summer, the emission credits related to that facility were transferred to another new power plant. But in order to provide voltage support in the system, synchronous condensers were used to convert the generating facilities to provide essentially the water pressure in the system, in the electrical system, if you will, to support the electrical system, also enable some greater imports of power in Southern California. Part of the challenge right now is with the uncertainty of the interplay of the different power plants is knowing how long those synchronous condensers will be needed in that site. We would need to retire those synchronous condensers in December of 2017 in order to enable the repowering of the second power block by the first quarter of 2021. So AES anticipates that we might need a compliance date extension to December 31st, 2022 because of the synchronous condensers which may be needed in 2018. And that delays essentially the demolition, which delays the construction. I think we covered most of the points on this slide. But I guess the main feature is that at this point, because of the uncertainty, we're again not recommending a change, but this is definitely on the watching list. Alamitos. Alamitos is the power facility that is just south and slightly east of LAX. It's a large facility. It has 6 units, 2,000 megawatts. Like Huntington Beach, its position is important in the grid and help support the San Diego area region. The licensing process to repower that facility is underway. It's a phased process that kind of takes these 6 units in sequence. And right now, the AES proposal indicates that they may need an extension for at least some of those power units beyond their 2020 phase-out date. Encina, and now Encina and Carlsbad are essentially the same energy resource. They're next to each other. They have different circumstances. But I wanted to point out and tie back to my earlier comment, which the energy resources in the San Diego area are the most valuable to continue support and reliability in the wake of the loss of songs. So it's a very significant energy resource need area identified by CalISO. The Energy Commission has already approved a project in the Carlsbad area to replace Encina. But the project design and needs have changed, and in fact, at tomorrow's Energy Commission business meeting, we'll be appointing a siting committee to formally begin the process. The papers have already been filed, the application, to amend an existing license to change the nature of it. And essentially, the major feature, what's being proposed in the new plant, is one that can ramp up and down very quickly. And that's needed to match the loads and the projected load needs in that area, and also to integrate variable and deal with peak variable energy resources and deal with peak energy needs. And so they needed more flexibility there. So that's just beginning its process, but again, it has a lot of moving parts, but it's one of the ones that we will be looking at to see whether in the future we'll need an extension beyond its 2017 once through cooling phase-out date. And last, it's not in Southern California, but it'd be incomplete if we didn't have it on the list, and that is a very large generating facility, which is at Moss Landing in the Monterey Bay area. Very large energy resource. Some of it is older, some of it's newer. It has a load support role that helps support the greater San Francisco Bay Area, and its outcome is uncertain, and the time frame is uncertain. But again, we're going to have that on our watch list. So in conclusion, we're recommending that the Water Board stand pat for now. We're flagging some energy resources that we need to watch, that we may be making a different recommendation in the future, but there are so many uncertainties at this point in time, we're not comfortable making a recommendation to you for change at this point. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Oh, just one comment. Tam and I were at Carlsbad at the looking at the desal facility the week that they got the word that they had been approved for I guess by the CPUC for getting a contract for procurement contract, and they told the folks at the desal facility that they were still targeting June of 27. Was it 2017? I believe. See, 2016. That the Carlsbad folks should be prepared to have their designs set up for a new intake by 2016, because they after that they could be moving at any point.
Well, there are a lot of processes that
Right.
have to be completed before a lot of reviews and permits and things like that by other agencies.
Right.
We're not entirely in control, but it's definitely an area where additional energy resources are needed, and needed relatively soon.
Well, they're moving quickly, is what
Yeah.
is the sense that I got. Thank
Very
you.
good.
I guess one other thing. I just want to thank you and your staff, and the ISO staff, and the CPUC staff, the staff. But I know you all do the bulk of the work, and it's been so relieving to have you all there and not having to kind of learn a whole new area, but work collaboratively with you. And it was, a brainchild of John and others. But I just really thank you for what you've done. It has made my life much easier. I suspect it's made all of our lives much easier, just knowing you're there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll pass your gratitude along to the team. It truly is a team effort, with each member doing a lot of heavy lifting. But thank you very much, and I'll pass that along.
Yeah, I'll add my thanks. It really is comforting and nice. I mean, just the spirit of partnership on this is really terrific. So thanks for doing that and for taking your valuable time to come and do the report yourself. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Ditto.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for integrating water resources into the energy picture. It's a great model. We really appreciate it.
Right. Fly safely. I'm also, if you don't mind, with all due respect to the drought team, I know you have a ton to do, but I think we may have people from outside here for item number 8. So can we take item number 8? Amy, mine? Okay. I don't know. Is that you?
Ms. Townsend, are there any comment cards for item number 8?
Oh,
In that case, I'm more than happy to move it.
okay.
I'm more than happy to second.
Good job, guys.
Well, I learned a lot reviewing this EMDL, and I was ready. I mean, this is no disrespect. Thank you for coming, and it was a good adaptive management model. Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Thanks. Good job. Okay. Item number 6.
That wasn't much of a delay for us, which is so. Sure, thanks. I'm Amanda Montgomery, the program manager in charge of water rights permitting and licensing, and I also have with me John O'Hagan, the assistant deputy director of water rights. So I'll start with an overview of where we're at with our temporary urgency changes and our transfers, and then I'll turn it over to John for other issues like curtailment. So we, on our drought webpage, maintain a list of the urgency changes that we're processing through with the drought. So the members of the public or the board members can always go on there and see our current status as we move those through. We have 3 that we're working on right now, processing. So I'll just tell you a little bit about them. If you have other questions on them, I can tell you more. The first one is from Hidden Lakes Community Service District, and that's in the Puda Creek watershed. And they are asking for relaxation of a flow augmentation term that's in their permanent license that starts July 15th. And so they divert from subterranean stream of Puda Creek, and part of their requirements of their water rights is that they add flows back in to meet a certain amount at a downstream gauge. So we're continuing to process that one. We've been talking to the fisheries agencies, and we have consulted with them on a term. There's downstream western pond turtle and frogs that are supported by those flows. So we're working out, if we do reduce the flows, what would be a protective level. The next one is a request in Southern California from the city of Thousand Oaks down in a creek in the Ventura County area. And they divert water from the creek that has 2 sources, natural sources from the creek and also returned wastewater. So they have a term in their water right that requires them to meet a bypass number from the natural flows. And they'd like to reduce that number from 6 CFS to 2 CFS. So again, in that situation, we've been working with the fisheries agencies from California Department of Fish and Game, and there we've worked out a term that would allow a reduction in the bypass just during these drought conditions, but still be protective of the turtle habitat that's downstream. So there's always different kinds of creatures that are involved. So we're working on that one. The third one is from, I guess we're just doing a survey of California here. So it's all the way on the other side of the Sierras. It's in the Mono Lake Basin. It's called June Lake Public Utility District. And they're asking to relax their bypass flow for a creek that eventually feeds into June Lake. They have a requirement for bypass of 200 gallons per minute, which isn't very much, but they would like to reduce that to 20 gallons per minute just during the drought. Simultaneously with their urgency change petition, they turned in also a long-term change petition, and we noticed that petition and we had protests from parties. 2 of the protestants, the Department of Fish and Game and the U.S. Forest Service, are both okay with a short-term change, though they maintain their protest on the long-term change. So that one's also getting closer. Did you have a question?
So maybe I missed it. Short term means how long versus long term?
Sure. So the urgency changes are 180 days.
Mm-hmm.
So in the situation of June Lake, they are looking for immediate relief because of the drought, because they can't supply their population. They also have the exact same problem with the bypass term in every dry year that they have. That's why they're seeking a long-term change. So I just point that one out as an example. So again, we're working with the fisheries agencies on appropriate conditioning as needed. And on all 3 of those, we're also working on conservation terms to add into their orders. And each situation for a city or community is different. They're in different stages of their drought plans. They're doing different amount of implementation actions. So we have to craft that based on the specific communities.
So have we seen the conservation terms that you're mixing and matching?
We can definitely pull a table together of those for you.
I would like to see them because
Sure.
it's been
They're
a
all
long
in the
time.
orders, but we can pull them out. for you.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to see them because
Sure.
we saw them years ago, and times have.
Well, and I'm going to talk through 2 that we recently approved, and
Okay.
if you want, I can talk through what those conservation terms are. I have them, I can pull them up and we can kind of go over what happened with each of them. So the first of the 2 that we've recently approved, which the board chair mentioned, was Montague. And so Montague is up in the north part of the state in Siskiyou County, and it's a complicated project because some parts of it involve water rights and water quality, and then other aspects are kind of more handled by Department of Public Health. But I'll talk about our water rights input into that project. So they came to us for an urgency change of Montague Water Conservation District's water right. They hold the water right to Dwinell Dam, and what they asked is to change our water right to allow temporary supply to the city downstream. So they're adding municipal as a purpose of use the city as a place of use and adding a point of diversion on the river. So with our urgency change, what it involves is releases from the reservoir that they'll send down and pick up in the city. They're only going to do that when temperatures are cooler. So even though we granted the urgency change, which has an effective date of July 1st, in actuality, there's conditioning about temperature, so they're most likely to use that like in the October timeframe. The other part of the project that involved water rights approval was because they're building a new point of diversion, they went through the 401 certification process, and so we issued that on June 2nd, the same day we issued the urgency change. The third part of the project, which we've been coordinating with but doesn't involve us as directly, is the fact that during those times when the temperature is hot, they're adding in either a new groundwater well that they'll pump the flows into the river, or they're going to utilize a pre-1914 water right to obtain water. So they're looking at both those options. The well has been the most discussed option. So, and then the well involves the Water Quality Control Board because they'll be adding well water into the river. So on Montague, we did add a conservation term, and the conservation term reflects that that city is in a drought emergency. They have tiered rates. They also have a number of restrictions on outdoor watering, and I could read all those to you, but it might be easier to just have a table that lists all the different points. They're in a fairly severe state, and they really need the water, and so they're working with their community to make sure that they use the water that they have in a responsible way.
And so on tiered rates, do you give them a certain amount of time to put those in? Because
They already had them.
Oh, they
So
already
that was
had
already
them.
part of their drought plan.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't us requiring tiered rates of them. It was just reflecting. That's why I say that each situation is different. So
Did you review the tiered rates, and do you have criteria you use to determine whether they're adequate, or just having them?
we just looked at their whole picture. Really, we're targeting that they are not that they have tiered rates, but that they're doing meaningful conservation and getting close to the governor's target of 20% reduction. But it's hard to make comparisons between conservation terms because where are you starting from and where are you going? If you're already close to, like June Lake, I think is between 60 and 70 gallons per person per day already. So, 20% on them might be different than 20% if you're starting with 200 gallons per person per day.
That's a very important point that
Right.
should be repeated over and over. Thank
Okay.
you for making that point.
So next I'll move on to another recent approval, and that is El Dorado Irrigation District. I've mentioned it before. They have a wastewater change order with us from the 90s, and they asked for relaxation of their fisheries releases into Deer Creek. And we granted that order. We worked with Department of Fishing Wildlife, and they originally asked for a complete cessation of their discharges, but we didn't agree to that. We agreed to a stepwise reduction with careful fisheries monitoring to see the effects of those change. Again, this is a situation where, like June Lake, they're pursuing a long-term change. That's our understanding. So this study will help inform their long-term plans. As far as the conservation term for EID, it was a little different. We focused the term on the irrigation aspect because wastewater use is irrigation. It's not, all the uses that we might see in a municipality area. They had a drought plan. They have a drought plan, and they're in stage 2. Stage 2 for them is a combination of mandatory and voluntary actions, and we